Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Critique Corner,
Yes, with me, Daniel Parker.
and me, DB Fastbinder. And if this is your first time joining us and you like the cut of our jib, give us a like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things.
Yes, all those wonderful algorithm-friendly things. If you are new here, what we usually do is we will start off with what we're calling it media of the week. This is
hmm
something that we've been some form of media we've been consuming over the past week, and then we talk box office because where the box office goes, that's usually where entertainment and pop culture goes,
hmm
and then we get into our topics. And
It
so,
was an interesting week.
yeah, it was a very interesting week, and uh, for media of the week, we actually watched the same thing. And since we were talking about the follow up TV show of this, we thought we would just go ahead and watch the movie.
Yes, so Daniel had seen this a long time ago. I never had for whatever reason. I think I even remember Willow coming up in conversation with my dad once and him just going, "Oh, yeah, that one was just bad."
It's kind of weird. I remember this movie popping up occasionally when I was a kid, back in the like early '90s,
hmm
and then it just kind of disappeared. Like yeah, and it
Yeah.
just yeah, and it was almost kind of became lost media because I think they released it on VHS, but then it took them a while to put it out on DVD, and then it took them a while to put it out on Blu-ray, although that might be George Lucas, um, but who of course was the producer and one of the writers on the movie, directed by
Ron
Opie.
Howard.
Yeah, Ron
Yes.
Howard. Yeah, Opie. Don't call him Opie.
Oh, I'm sure he loves that.
Oh, yeah.
Look. Ron Howard is great. He has strong genes, genes so strong that his daughter was able to run away from a T-Rex in high heels.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. Um, but I guess we should talk about this movie.
Yes, I guess we should talk about the movie itself.
Yes.
So, Willow is a very classic fantasy story about a, a, not totally not a hobbit named
Yeah.
Willow, who ends up becoming the protector of a human girl who is fated to uh, bring about the defeat of the Dark Queen who is threatening the lands.
Mhm. And yeah, and of course the baby ends up in the little person village, and they decide that to just return the baby to her people, despite the fact that the evil queen's got hunting parties after the baby. Um,
To be fair, yeah, that's right. They did know about that because the wolves showed up.
right. Yeah. Um, and of course, since it was actually Willow's kids find the baby, and but of
Mhm.
course it's Willow, so he has to be the one to take the baby to safety, and they end up in the little crossroads, and that's where they meet Mad Mardigan, who's in a cage. Of course, yeah, played by Val Kilmer. Uh, and he's kind of the he's like the Han Solo of the
Yeah,
movie. Yeah.
just with the rogue cranked up to 11.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
now, and yeah, so it's basically they go through some standard fantasy things. They have to go to this place to meet this person who will tell them the thing that will help them with the quest
Mhm.
um and how, how to put this. People have said I've heard people say that this is basically, oh, this is just Star Wars with fantasy, and I don't quite see it. I I see like the George Lucas doing his love of the hero with 1,000 faces thing,
Mhm.
where it's like a very classic hero's journey type story.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think people comparing it to Star Wars in that way are off base.
Yeah, I think they're comparing it that way because of just the archetypes of the characters.
Right.
But I would say the story itself does deviate pretty heavily. Deviate pretty heavily from Star Wars. I mean,
Right. Like,
yeah,
a few examples. This guy here, he's like the town wizard of the little people. I think he might be my favorite character.
yeah,
Uh, he's not in a lot of scenes, but he's very memorable in the scenes he is in. Like,
yeah. He's played by Billy Barty, who was a famous little person actor. He'd been in. Although he was in the infamous live action Masters of the Universe movie.
oof.
Yeah, but yeah.
This was a better one to be in.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But like they in the early scene, he's oh I have the bones, the bones tell me all.
yeah,
He well the bones tell me nothing. Do you want to go with this child?
yeah.
And but to get back on track with the actual critique rather than the sidetrack here,
Yeah,
so I would say that the effects haven't necessarily aged all that well.
yeah, quite a lot of stop motion. Yeah,
Not even the stop motion, because of course I'm biased. I love stop motion. I actually could tell, oh, that was Phil Tippett's work,
yeah,
because you might know him as the guy who did the AT-AT attack in Empire Strikes Back and the Rancor. He just has this particular way of filming and animating things that is immediately distinctive, in kind of the same way that Ray Harryhausen is.
yeah,
He was originally going to do the special effects for all of Jurassic Park until they showed up and showed what the CGI could do.
yeah,
Uh, I've seen the clips on his YouTube channel, which is interesting to poke at, because they actually have a bit where, in that, like, for whatever reason, I don't know what he did, because he had actually done dinosaur documentary stuff and knew what dinosaurs were like. He had the velociraptors have forked tongues like snakes
huh?
and like be sniffing around with their tongues. That was weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's again off topic. And I don't want to make it seem like this is a bad movie.
No,
Uh,
it's yeah, no, it's a good movie. Yeah,
like it's a little bit standard fantasy nowadays, but we're also 30 odd years later, after loads and like this was more special in the 80s, I think.
oh yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And that was the other thing too. In the '80s, there was a bit of an explosion in fantasy movies.
Yeah, I think we can thank Conan for that.
Yeah,
So and this was like very much, this was very different than the Conan inspired stuff, because
hmm,
well, no nudity.
right. Yeah, and violence is really tamped down to get that
Yep.
PG rating. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, the other thing I found interesting was this, that it there were a lot of creative choices made that just seemed a little off kilter. Like, oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Like li- like things like when they come across a witch who they save, like a good witch.
Hmm.
Her first form she's in is, of all things, an Australian possum. Like, I was like, what is that animal? Like, I didn't quite recognize it, but it looked vaguely familiar. I almost thought it was a bush baby, or one of those, like, or a tarsier or something, but no, it was an
Yeah.
Australian possum.
Huh. Hmm.
There's also like a lot of body horror for a kids movie.
Yeah, 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 the scene when there's one scene in particular with the where Willow uses his magic on one of the trolls, and then it turns into this,
Yeah,
Cronenberg-esque thing. Yeah,
like this ball that falls into a lake and then emerges as a two-headed dragon.
yeah,
Like that was horrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like, again, like lots of odd choices. And I think it's interesting that, and I kind of think I did this too with my novels. It's like, okay, I did one series where I have kind of a hard magic system where shapeshifting isn't a thing. So the next one I'm going to lean into shapeshifting and use it all over the place. Like, there's a lot of that in this movie. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. You mentioned the older witch that they find, and Willow keeps trying to bring her back into her human form, and she keeps turning into one animal after another. And
Yeah. To be fair, a crow is a big step up from being a possum, just for a getting around perspective.
yeah, that's true.
I also want to praise Val Kilmer as Mad Mardigan. I've heard people talk about the character fondly over the years, and I see why now.
Yeah,
He's just a
yeah,
lot of fun.
he's a lot of fun, and he's he's there when it counts. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that the princess over here is much less memorable.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of had a funny thing because she's the daughter of the evil queen, and then she turns on her mom because oh, Matt Mardigan.
Yep. Look, Val Kilmer was a very handsome man in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now, so the effects that I really think that aged the worst were, they had these two annoying characters who were basically like little Jar Jars, who were the brownies,
Yeah.
and they were not composited well into some scenes.
No, you could really tell, especially with the HD. Yeah, the HD transfer, they had to look a little jarring.
Yeah, the lines around them, and yeah, there's just not a good time. Characters that I wish they had kind of left out.
Yeah, they really didn't do much.
No, they were, of course, that's there for the 5-year-olds who would think that the guys who sounded like the Monty Python Frenchman on helium would be funny.
Yeah, and they even do a little. They have a little reference to Gulliver's Travels with them.
Yeah. So I think overall it was a good time. Just it wasn't a huge success because it's a baseline hit of a movie as opposed to like a home run like Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and I don't know how well I think it's one of those movies that it didn't do that well when it came out, but it kind of got a bit of a cult following, and
Yeah, like it was profitable in theaters, but not immensely so.
yeah, and of course, we all know that after the Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm, that they did the TV series, and of course, we haven't watched that, and that's only half the story.
That is not going to change.
Yeah.
I was really thinking as I was watching it, man, or especially at the end of it, man, there really isn't a continuation to be had here. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Any sequel is going to have to make up everything out of whole cloth. You don't even have anything like Darth Vader getting away in that TIE fighter.
Right.
To
Yeah.
imply that there could be future evil, which, boy, that is one of the all-time great prescient things to not do. Like, imagine if there was an alternate cut where Vader did seem to die. Like, that would have made Lucas's life so much harder writing Empire.
Oh yeah. 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 But although real quick as we wrap it up, of course, like Val Kilmer and then the actress who plays the princess, Joanne Whalley, they actually got married.
Really?
Yeah. After they did this movie, Kilmer actually, I watched his documentary on Amazon Prime, and he actually had a big crush on her for a few years. he was in London shooting a movie, and he saw a play with her in it, and he went, "Oh wow!" And he just fell in love with her, and he wanted to meet her, but he was like, "Oh, I'm just some lowly actor, she doesn't want to meet me." And then
That's great.
yeah, although unfortunately they got divorced a few years later.
I was wondering.
Yeah, and actually they got divorced while he was filming The Island of Dr. Moreau. Which is kind of one of the reasons why he was a bit of a jerk when they were making that movie.
Yeah. I was going to say that's a story that, much like Willow itself, was sweet until you tried to continue it.
Yeah, I know. But speaking of Willow, Warwick Davis was only 17 when he made this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Which that implies he was way younger than I thought when he was Wicket.
He was a little.
Jedi.
Yeah, he was a little kid. He was like he'd be like 11 or 12. Yeah.
Wow, 17, and he already had a wife and 2 kids.
I know. Yeah.
that does explain a few things, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Although he was good in the role, like he's not Shakespearean or anything, but this was not a Shakespearean production.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, no, he was really good in this movie. Yeah.
Yep. Well, enough about good-ish stuff from the past. Let's talk about the current crap.
Yes.
Although, so as always, we start with the box office, and boy, John Wick Chapter 4 came in like a wrecking ball.
Oh yeah.
This is especially impressive given that R-rated movie that's nearly 3 hours long.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very curious to see how well this movie would do with all of that, and yeah.
The answer was it's paying for Lionsgate, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
And against a $100 million budget, this thing's getting its money back.
Oh yeah.
Even if they doubled even if they spent another $100 million advertising it, $300 million to break even. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It'll make it. Yeah.
The crazy thing is that it made more money in its opening weekend than the entire box office run of the original John Wick, I think.
Oh, that's
just about, 76 for the entire box office run of
John Wick. Wow.
Yeah, very nearly close there. Yeah, I know. I need to watch John Wick already.
Yeah.
Also, hey, Changus.
Hey, Changus.
It's on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
But going back to the overall thing, Shazam! Fury of the Gods had basically the same 69% drop off that Ant-Man and the Wasp did, though from a third of the starting box office. So less than a third. Oof.
Yeah. It's a bomb.
Yep. Which it sounds like everybody who watches it was totally fine. Which, like we just saw with Willow, totally fine does not make for a ringing endorsement when you have options.
Right. Yeah.
Scream 6, it's doing good. 89 million after 3 weeks for what's bound to be a relatively inexpensive horror movie. That's fine.
Yeah.
Got 35 million.
Oh yeah.
Probably spent way more on that for advertising, but still, it's no problems at all. Creed 3 continuing on there. 65 mega bomb, unfortunately for them.
Yeah.
like we joked last time, Adam Driver doesn't Adam drive people to the theaters.
No, he does not.
And then Puss in Boots is finally out of the top 10, and Avatar is joining it shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Just came out on digital, so that's not going to help it at all.
No, it hasn't. And I wonder when it's going to drop on like Disney Plus.
That's a good question, or if it even will.
I think the first Avatar is on there, I think.
Okay, I was wondering if they would do the thing where they tried to put it on Hulu to differentiate it a bit, but no. Okay, so I guess it's just a matter of not if, but when. But it's really making the case that you're best off not pretending that everything we find, everyone will go to the movie in the first 30 days if we say it's dropping on the streaming service in 30 days.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
As far as other interesting movies, Jesus Revolution is really sticking in there. 49 million local or total gross.
Yeah, you
Which,
talk about a super low budget movie.
yeah, 15 million.
Yeah.
And I recall it, 15 million its opening weekend. So this thing is legging out over the weeks. So
Wow.
it sounds like it's just a well-meaning little film. It actually sounds like something I would want to watch with my parents.
Yeah, me too. It takes place it's in the 70s with the Jesus freaks. When they were all the hippies that were becoming Christians.
The hippies who said, "Ah, crap! I think I need to do something about my soul after Woodstock."
Yeah. And the guy, the actor who plays the leader of the group, he plays Jesus in The Chosen.
That's funny.
Yeah, and Kelsey Grammer plays this like old stodgy pastor, and
Which is perfect casting for him.
yes, yes.
But yeah, I mean, aside from picking on Ant-Man while it's down out of the top 5 after 6 weeks, what the heck? We'll just give it one last bit of disrespect.
Yes.
We live in a world where I meant to open up Puss in Boots here.
Right.
We live in a world where it may fail to beat Puss in Boots,
Ooh.
despite having a $100 million opening. Because right
Man.
now, Puss in Boots is sitting at 476, Ant-Man is sitting at 465, and we once again have our nice little sad sperm whale chart here,
Jeez.
where it's also doing the Marvel thing where it just flattens out forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a good time to be a Disney shareholder, as we will get into later.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we actually had a real surprise with the Wash at Home chart. So this is people buying digital rentals and things like Redbox and whatnot. The Whale actually is number 1, which I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. Yeah.
Because it seems like it's a little bit niche. I mean, you win a Best Actor award, but those aren't usually moneymakers.
No, that yeah, and especially a movie like that because from what I've heard about it, it's kind of like I don't know if I want to watch that movie.
Yeah, a coworker confirmed it did not have a happy ending.
Yeah.
Man Called Otto actually moving up the charts a bit, which surprised me because I watched Film Threats review of it and went, okay, you're trying to be poignant to make me feel things. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Everything Everywhere, not surprising since
No.
this is for the week of 3/18. Dragon Ball Super Superhero going from 13th to 5th. I thought this was on its way out, but it just boom.
Ooh, yeah, man.
I need to watch that just because Gohan finally gets to do things.
Chinggis says the whale's really good, but yeah, not a happy time watching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the type of thing where I'd have to be in a very particular mood to want to bring myself down.
Yeah.
But Puss in Boots still in the top 5, though it lost its number 1 throne that it had held for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The Ritual Killer moving up. Oh, women talking. Okay, fine. I guess people do want to hear women talking. Good on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Top Gun and Black Panther still in there. Fableman's dropped a lot.
Yeah.
Missing. Maybe I Do.
No idea what that is.
like 3 million total box office. This seems like something that was that's basically a straight to DVD release with an asterisk on it.
Yeah. Okay, Emma Roberts is in it. All right. Yeah.
Who's she again?
She is the niece of Julia Roberts
Oh, okay.
and the daughter of Eric Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that she got her aunt's acting skill or her dad's acting skill?
Good question.
Let's see here. The unbearable weight of massive talent stayed at 15, which that's interesting that it was out there. I wonder if they did like a promotion on it, or because
Yeah,
that's been out of
maybe.
theaters for a while.
Yeah.
Walking Dead season 11. Why?
Why? Yeah.
Girl who escaped the Kara Robertson story. No idea what that is. Girl in the Closet,
Megan,
which is a Lifetime movie of some sort. Yeah, like I would say, like the big surprise is, I guess a lot of people wanted to feel sad,
yeah,
or at least see what that Oscar hype was all about.
yeah. See, Brendan Fraser playing a very, very large man.
Appropriating my culture.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's not Puss in Boots around anymore. Let's go ahead
Yeah.
and get into our actual stories. So, Disney's having an interesting week. Let's talk a little bit of Boot. Jonathan Majors.
Yes.
So, we talked before the show, and I believe that we want to we do not want to get into speculating about who did what.
Right. Yeah.
We were not there. We do not know either party, and it just seems mildly inappropriate.
Right. Yeah. And I think we kind of learned our lesson from Justin Roiland to wait.
Yep.
Until we get all the info.
Well, while the bandwagon is crowded, you don't necessarily want to jump onto it.
Right. Yeah.
So what happened is that at some point on the weekend, some sort of seemingly physical thing happened between Jonathan Majors and his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed he was arrested, which, in a lot of people's minds, that's an immediate guilty verdict. By the way, that's a great way to either to get out of jury duty is just go, yeah, I assume that all accused people are guilty because the cops don't make mistakes.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I was going to do when I got called for jury duty.
But what it seems like is that arrest may have just been a matter of domestic dispute law. Like you just automatically arrest somebody if there is a seemingly credible crime around that, just as like a means of protecting people.
Yeah, and and the way the laws are, in I would say probably the majority of jurisdictions, it's the man that's going to get arrested.
Yep. Now, what has happened that's interesting since then is that Jonathan Majors' lawyer did say that there was exonerating evidence that we haven't seen yet, and apparently the girlfriend sent some texts out that seems to indicate that she didn't want the arrest to happen, that she was just in a bad state. Actually went to the hospital for, like, it seems like emotional issues. Yeah. So the lawyer, Jonathan Majors' lawyer, had been talking about 2 written statements that exonerated John, and it seems like these are these 2 text messages.
Yeah, and apparently there's video evidence that exonerates him, which I think that was the evidence you just mentioned earlier. Sorry.
No, that's this is strange that hasn't gotten out. It may not, just depending on how things go.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, the way these, yeah, just the way investigations are, yeah, they don't want to
Yep.
release that stuff to the public.
Yep. So it's all very fuzzy.
Hmm.
So again, like we don't want to go into, like, we don't want to speculate too much about what happened. Now, what clearly has happened though is it has already had an impact on Major's career
Hmm.
because he had been doing a series of ads for the Army, and immediately, like as soon as there was even before the arrest even happened and there was talk of it,
Hmm.
it was suddenly there was a sudden immediate yank from the Army.
Yeah, and from what I understand, they said they're not, they're just pulling them temporarily, waiting for the, I guess, for the process to play itself out and see what
Mm.
happens. They could very easily bring those ads back.
Yep, because it, uh, people were joking, oh, leave it to the Army to make snap decisions.
Yeah.
But also, if we're honest, like Jonathan Majors is less important to the Army than he is for Creed or Marvel, because for an Army commercial, honestly, you just get somebody with a commanding voice to talk about inspiration or duty or things like that, and you're
Hmm.
golden.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they had Gary Sinise do it for a while.
Hmm.
So, because he's very if you've seen Forrest Gump, he was Lieutenant Dan, and that's,
Okay.
yeah, he's been very active with like USO and you know, all that, but yeah, he's especially important to Marvel because he's of course playing Kang, and they've been really hyping him up the last couple of years, and getting him ready to play, getting ready, with Kang Dynasty, with the Avengers movies. So
The,
it's
the new Thanos replacement,
yeah,
which that leads us to what we really want to speculate about, because long knives have come out for him on Twitter since then.
yeah, which usually tends to happen with cases like this. It happened with Justin Roiland,
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, yeah, where people who worked with him in the past are making unsubstantiated allegations against him.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, it's like, okay, well, where's your proof of this? Oh, he's this, he's that, like,
Yep.
you know, yeah.
Changa says, I hope he's proven innocent. I don't care about Marvel, but I really liked him in Creed 3. Now, what's interesting now that you mentioned that is, I should say, speaking of boxing, now how Disney and Sony, for that matter, respond to this, or excuse me, not Sony, Amazon, I guess, responds to this via their MGM subsidiary,
Yeah,
which is a weird sentence to say, but here we are.
yeah.
Because the victim informed police she was assaulted. Police said the woman was taken to a hospital with complaints of minor head and neck injuries, which is why the arrest happened. So clearly something happened, assuming that report is true.
Yeah, and of course, this the flip side of this is, if this is a, for I'm trying to find the right word, well, toxic relationship, let's just say, put it that way.
Yeah, this doesn't necessarily seem like the most stable relationship.
Yeah, and usually in relationships like this, where one person is on the receiving end of the other, um, they will often kind of like make excuses for them, and
Yeah.
they'll be like, well, no, they're not really a bad person, they just had this, and
Yep.
you know
Yep. But what's clear is that something physical happened. Now that could range anything from a crime committed to self-inflicted wounds because of emotional instability,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have noticed, and I was actually mildly surprised that we haven't heard anything from Disney about this that I'm aware of.
No, they're keeping quiet, and it could very well be that they learned their lesson from Johnny Depp, and they don't want to jump to conclusions.
And James Gunn, for that matter.
And James Gunn, yeah.
Because this would be the most damaging thing they had done to the Marvel Universe since firing James Gunn. Because from what I have heard and what I recall at the time, the plan for after Thanos was to go galactic and have Gunn be the architect of that.
Yep.
And this whole multiverse thing was kind of, crap, what's plan B?
Yeah. And let's get a bunch of Rick and Morty writers to do it.
You know, I do wonder if that was part of the plan A. To like, would Gunn have brought in the same writing team? Well, would he have even had the choice if he was architecting things?
Good question.
But so this is going to be interesting to watch. Again, Disney has not made a snap judgment. MGM has not made a snap judgment. I think that alone makes me think that some sort of truth will out that isn't too damaging to him.
Yeah. It could very well be that they know something that we don't.
Unfortunately, this is now kind of a stain on his career, because you know that a certain percentage of people heard that, never looked past the initial headline, and in their minds, oh, he beat his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, and it will take a lot of facts to dissuade them. Which, if the police decide to release him, and they conclude there's not enough to charge with, they won't care. So this is more bad news that that the studios he's employed with didn't need.
Yeah, and although I do want to say kind of real quick, I don't think this is another Ezra Miller situation. Hopefully,
yeah. That is interesting when you think about it. As much people came out of the woodwork, as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard of anybody coming out of the woodwork saying them too.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's like the most that the accusations I've heard have been, this guy is hard to work with. I do not like this guy, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, Hollywood is littered with actors and actresses who are difficult to work with, quote unquote.
Yep. So yeah, that might have been our mild take ever.
Yeah.
We are firmly riding this fence right down the middle.
Yes.
Because it's still a developing story, and darn it, we're trying to be responsible. This is probably why we have 64 subscribers instead of 64,000. But
yeah, we don't. We don't fan the flames. We don't. We don't dogpile. We try to be fair and objective, and sometimes that's not always the popular way to do it.
Nope. So who knows? By next week we might have an update on this.
Yeah.
Though, speaking of a bad week for certain people at Disney.
Yes.
So, begun the Disney layoffs have.
Yes.
One of the things I thought was interesting, so they're talking about firing 7,000 people, and from the sounds of it, that may not be 7,000 actual fires. It might be like part of it might be done via a hiring freeze. But there's sort of a pattern with it, and it's proving that Bob Iger may not know how to properly bid for Fox. But he is not to be messed with.
Yeah, that's I really thought that when they brought him back in, that he was going to be it was just going to be like it was when he was there before, and that has turned out to not be the case.
No.
He's he's basically doing what Chapek was trying to do.
Yeah, I've made this analogy before, but it's really like that Trotsky pig rolling out his 5-year plan in Animal Farm, getting killed, and then Napoleon, the Stalin pig, coming in and immediately going out, here's my 5-year plan after just picking up
Yeah.
the binder.
Yeah.
Because just from a business perspective, some of these cuts were blatantly obvious that they needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook can't make money off the metaverse. Why does Disney need a 50-person metaverse development team?
They don't.
Yep, so they're gone. Um, Victoria Alonso damaged the company in many ways. What a coincidence. She's gone.
Yeah.
Ike Perlmutter tried to help with that proxy fight that we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
He is out.
Yeah, and a lot of people have said that they thought he was already gone.
He was on the board. He technically still was a head of Marvel, just that they had taken away his creative control because, among other things, he didn't want to make Black Panther and Captain Marvel movies.
Yeah, yeah, and Changis says that his metaverse is still a thing. Kind of, sort of.
It would not surprise me if Facebook renames itself back to Facebook
Yeah,
in the near future, because like the idea of the metaverse is cool, but just as a how things have actually turned out for it, not so much.
yeah,
And actually, we're seeing some. By the way, for those who don't know, Ike Perlmutter, uh, basically, he was like the head of either the founder or head of Toy Biz, which was part of Marvel in the 90s. Like it was their toy division, and when they went bankrupt, he ended up in charge of the company. He's always had a reputation as a real jerk and curmudgeon.
yeah, yeah.
I've heard stories that at the Marvel Comics offices, people had to bring their own toilet paper.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to turn the lights on in their office. They had to use the natural light from outside.
Right, which on the one hand, if your company is coming out of bankruptcy, that's reasonable-ish. But on the other hand, oof, that sounds like a really awful work environment.
Yeah, and yeah, you're down to pencils and paper at that point.
Yep. Did you really have to sharpen that pencil? That point was still good. We just wasted some graphite.
Yeah. Oh man.
Now, part of this is possibly, was it Nelson Van Pelt? Pelt?
Yeah, Peltz.
Well, it was
God, yeah, I
one
can't
of the
remember.
things that Peltz got out of Disney when he decided to drop his proxy battle was they're promising to start paying a dividend at the end of the year again.
Mm.
So if you're having to give out money to investors, then this is a sensible move. It's also just a sensible move because they were really freaking overspending on things.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was Nelson Peltz.
Nelson Peltz,
Um,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, good lord. Do you really need to spend $200 million on every single Marvel movie and every single Pixar movie?
Yeah, that's hard to make money on when you're spending $1 billion, or when you earn $1 billion. When
Yeah.
you have flop after flop after flop, and even
Yeah.
like your wins are like base runs, like possibly Black Panther and Thor were.
Yeah. And Doctor Strange 2 to an extent.
Doctor Strange 2 is like that's a clear victory of some sort. It's
Yeah.
they're probably disappointed didn't make $1 billion because, honestly, like their point of comparison pre-pandemic was, well, we managed to con people into seeing Captain Marvel and it made $1 billion.
Yeah.
Black Panther blew the roof off and it made 1.3 billion or
Mhm.
something close to that. So I'm sure that they imagined they were making $1 billion
Yeah.
for every movie going forward, which
Mm.
justifies a $200 million production budget.
Yeah.
Now, as far as yeah, so Perlmutter, I don't think don't cry for Perlmutter.
No.
He made his money when Disney bought Marvel.
Mhm.
Um, he helped shepherd in the first wave of MCU movies. I think that where he lost his influence was after Age of Ultron, as memory serves, somewhere in there.
Well, wasn't he the guy that said with Iron Man 3
Mhm.
that originally Maya Hansen was going to be the villain in Iron Man 3?
Hmm.
And I want to say it was either Perlmutter or somebody else who nixed that idea, saying, "Oh well, an action figure of a female villain doesn't sell."
That sounds like him.
Yeah.
Also, just for everything I've ever heard about how the toy industry works, he was probably right.
Yeah.
That is like that's a thing that is a long-standing observation about the boys action figure market, is that the female characters don't really sell all that well comparatively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember back in the days of Avatar: The Last Airbender, people were complaining, why can't I get a Korra, not a Korra, Katara?
Oh, Katara. Yeah.
Yeah, why can't I get a Katara? And yeah, you're right. They should have been able to get a Katara, but there were practical reasons because boys want to pretend to be Aang for a little bit. It feels for most of them it feels weird to pretend to be a girl for a little bit.
Yeah. Although and yeah, I wonder how, like with Playmates and Ninja Turtles, how many April O'Neil action figures they sold.
That is a good question. I know
Yeah.
that I had one, though I think it was technically my sister's.
I had one, and I think it was just because I was a completionist.
Yeah, right. Like, how often did you really get to? Although I remember, like, I used to do these elaborate. Like, I would go to a friend's house on Saturday, and we would get all of our action figures out. We'd make these elaborate stories, and it was
Yeah.
always different every time. And April ended up being a good stand-in for, like, we could make up characters to play with our Marvel people if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Uh, we were kind of out there, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Mhm.
Um, so, and actually, this over here, this headline that we're not going to click on, to earn profit, Lyft hired a CEO from a nonprofit, which is ironic.
Mhm.
But the fact that it's noteworthy that Lyft is trying to earn profit, there's a lot of businesses that have been living off of venture capital and low interest rates for a long time. So that's why
Yeah.
we're seeing these big rounds of layoffs.
Yes, because venture capital is drying up and interest rates are going up.
Yep, and that's the thing. Like when interest rates were like near zero, it was a totally reasonable thing for a venture capital firm to go, okay, um, we can put $1 million into Vice Media, and at this interest rate, it'll be basically just as good as getting $1 million in 10 years. So might
Mhm.
as well take the bet. Now it's like, well, we could take a risk on this, or we could get a bunch of CDs, or we could get a bunch of T bills or things like that.
Yeah.
So it's not as good of a bet as it used to be.
Yeah.
So in the era of profit, and I saw one I don't have a source for, that Clownfish TV is talking about how it's being noticed that a lot of these layoffs are disproportionately affecting um, what people call marginalized communities.
Mm.
Um, Part of it is that, and this is, it's how to put it, when you hire people because of what they are instead of what they can give you, they're the easiest ones to cut, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know there are a lot of people were making that allegation with Victoria Alonso, and that's just, of course, that's not the case with her.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, technically, she did bring something to the company early on. They did actually manage to launch, they did manage to launch a cinematic universe. Like, she was there on the ground floor. So
yeah.
um, it's just that the good times ended.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about her that I don't think we really talked about was that she technically violated her contract working on a Amazon uh, documentary about Argentina.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that so technically they caught her in a breach of contract. But there are brighter legal minds than us out there that you can listen to. I believe
Yeah.
the Monday Midnight's Edge stream had some good analysis of that because you had Script Doctor and Culture Casino, both of who I believe Script Doctor I know like he works in Hollywood. Culture Casino I think he has or he's like working with some like legal areas before.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's
so,
yeah,
so they
something
had
like that. Yeah.
they had an interesting conversation about well if you seem to have implicit permission and one breach the contract, does that mean that you can't come at her later for this breach?
Mm.
And it's the answer is like all things in law depends on who's arguing and
Yeah.
how and who's listening.
Yeah.
Um, there was I think it might have been a Ricada Law stream where he was talking about how like most laws are written to what they call a reasonable person standard, and somebody asked him in the chat, "What's a reasonable person?" And his reply was, "Man, if you could answer that, you'd have the law totally figured out. We wouldn't need lawyers."
Yeah.
So I think that about covers that story. So let's
Mhm.
get into our last story of the evening, which is Sony f's around and finds out.
Yeah.
So I think we have mentioned briefly that for the last yearish or so,
Mhm.
Microsoft has been attempting to purchase Activision Blizzard.
Mhm.
You know things are bad for a company when they hear that Microsoft of all companies is buying them out, and the general response from the gaming community is, "Oh, thank God, things are going to get better."
Yeah. Whoa.
Like,
Yeah.
man, you, you're doing a bad job at your job. But of course, it's because they squandered Overwatch, World of Warcraft, Call of
Mhm.
Duty.
Yeah.
Um, they they've ruined most projects that they were working on. So something had to give eventually.
Mhm.
Uh, Sony, being in the catbird position in the console wars, unless you count the Nintendo Switch, which they don't. We'll put a pin in that for right now.
Yeah.
Um, has been vociferously disagreeing with this, and basically in every market where the approval or where the purchase had to be approved,
Mhm.
it Sony was the biggest one fighting it. It
Yeah.
seems like Nintendo didn't especially care. I think it's because there aren't all that many Activision Blizzard games actually on Switch.
Yeah. I can't think of any really.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some out there but I just haven't really looked into it.
Hmm.
But whereas Sony has for a long time, since the PS4 era, enjoyed a cozy relationship with Activision Blizzard that got them some nice exclusives for Call of Duty,
Hmm.
which is, of course, one of those evergreen. You come out with a new game every year, and people buy the new game and a whole bunch of stuff that makes Sony money. So
Yeah.
Sony liked the idea of having those exclusivities.
Yes, kids every year pay $60 or I guess now $70 for what is essentially the same game. Cha-ching.
Yep, it's only a step removed from creative bankruptcy from the Madden series.
Yeah.
Which incidentally, Activision Blizzard owns the basketball equivalent of that.
Yeah.
Uh, now, as far as how that all has been going, I recommend a YouTube channel that has been tracking it. I had unsubscribed from them for a bit because the news was just getting kind of samey, but now it's getting good again. It's called Destin. He is a uh, he is a writer of, I believe, a former writer for some magazine or current writer. I forget what he is. What he is.
Yeah.
What he is now, at least part time. Okay, while I work for IGN, it should be noted that statements and opinion here are not IGN's; they're mine. So he
Okay.
is an IGN journalist, but he does his own thing on the side, and it's
Okay.
100,000 subscribers. He's doing quite well on the side.
Yes, I would say so.
So as far as the ins and outs of it, if you want to go do some research, I actually had a really good live stream interview with someone a couple of weeks back. It's an hour, but it's a well spent hour. Let's see here. Oh, he talked with Jaffe, the creator of God of War, about it. I didn't watch that whole one, but the good one is Michael Pachter on Xbox Activision about how it's going to hurt Sony badly, but he thinks that it's going to go through. Now, here's so that's kind of all background, and again, like it's interesting. You actually have people who you think would be opposed to it saying, "Yeah, we kind of need this to fight Tencent."
Yeah.
Which Tencent is the biggest gaming company in the world at this point, because they own a little piece of a bunch of companies like Epic Games and among others.
Yeah.
So this is being seen as a chance for Western games to build up the portfolio really needed to fight them. Because it isn't about how many PS5s or Xbox Series X's do you sell. It's about, okay, how do you crack mobile? How do you do stream gaming or game streaming?
Yeah.
However, that's a lot of preamble for this story, but since we haven't really been covering it, might as well.
Yeah, you got to give some background.
Yep. So, Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington State had some interesting things to say to a Japanese regulatory board, because Sony's been fighting this in a very deceptive way. That seems to have backfired slightly. So they have again been arguing in every jurisdiction that would let them talk about how, this is going to hurt competition. Microsoft is going to keep Call of Duty off of everything. Microsoft says, hey, we'll give you a deal. We don't want the deal. We just don't want you to buy Activision Blizzard. Go away. But they have made an interesting case that seems to have backfired on them. They basically presented an image of the console industry less Nintendo, which they called the, let's see here, they call it the, what was the high value?
Yeah.
High-end game market.
High-end game market, yeah.
Which is basically or Xbox and Sony, because they're the only ones making consoles besides the Switch. Really, the market we play in, and we're going to get hurt by this if Microsoft has access to all this content.
Yeah.
What's really funny about this is that in a recent trade discussion with Japanese regulators, Maria Cantwell said, hey, I noticed that you keep Japanese games off of the Xbox, and as a result, you have a 98% share of the high-end game market in Japan. Yeah. Now, here's the thing: like, if they hadn't defined it so narrowly when talking with the FTC, I doubt that Maria Cantwell would have had that language handy, because that is Sony's terminology for how they define their market.
Yeah. Jeez.
So if they had had Nintendo in there, it would have painted a different picture. But since they specifically excluded Nintendo, I guess because the Switch can be taken off and moved around and doesn't have the same graphical horsepower.
Right, yeah.
Now it's a question of, hey, Japan, why are you letting Sony crowd out Xbox? Maybe we should look into all these games that you've specifically paid the publishers never to put on Xbox or Game Pass.
Yeah, and it would explain why Xbox and any of Xbox games haven't caught on in Japan for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, part of that is that the Japanese market isn't big on shooters, which was kind of what the Xbox and Xbox 360 were built on.
Yeah, it was built to play. They were built to play Halo.
Yeah, pretty much. Uh, that was actually an interesting thing in a video I watched about the making of Star Fox. They talked about one of the Star Fox Assault for the GameCube, where this is an example of Nintendo being silly. They hired the makers of Ace Combat, the fighter game series, to make a
Yeah.
Star Fox game, which sounds like a match made in heaven. And they said, "Oh, by the way, shooters are popular in the West, so have a bunch of ground shooting levels." And the developer said, "Well, we don't like games like that, so
Yeah.
we're not comfortable with it." But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
It's like, why can't you play Final Fantasy VII Remake on Xbox? Sony paid Square Enix.
Mhm.
So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out, because it does seem like these different regulatory agencies are getting close. Like a bunch of them have already approved it.
Mhm.
Some with concessions, some without concessions. Um,
Yeah.
but this could actually end up affecting how third-party exclusives end up working,
Mhm.
because everyone's going, "Hey, wait, Sony kind of spent the whole PS4 generation buying off people not to port things to Xbox. Like, why doesn't Xbox have games? Well, because that was a lousy era for Xbox first-party development, but also quite a few bought-off exclusives."
Yeah.
This is also particularly funny because Sony seems to think that consoles are going to be the bee's knees forever, outside of a few recent forays into porting old games to PC 7 to 10 years later.
Yeah.
Like The Last of Us Part 1, which was a PS3 game originally, just landed on Steam.
Mm.
So it's like,
Very
at
interesting.
this point, why buy a PS5 if I really want to play it? I can just wait for
Yeah.
a PC at the very worst.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, and when I started doing my own little, when I started looking into this whole thing, it sort of reminded me of like what Nintendo was doing back in the late '80s and early '90s. They're pulling some shady stuff. With
Yeah.
yeah.
I read one book about it, and I think it was that Console Wars, or
Console wars. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's right. You saw the documentary. I read the book back in the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
and I think the description was, if you had told the president at the time that he was a monopolist, he would have said, "Well, thank you," and moved on with
Yeah.
his day.
Yeah.
So there's a reason that Sega never that Sega had troubles. And
Mhm.
part of it was, at least up until the Genesis actually started catching on, Nintendo did have them on some like really exclusive deals. Like, oh, you want to publish for Nintendo? Okay, your Nintendo game is not allowed to go to any competitive console ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, this is kind of the stage one of find out after a
Yeah.
year of being unreasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're probably going to regret. They might end up regretting going about it the way they have.
Yep, because for one thing, they've earned a bunch of bad blood from people who are paying attention to this.
Mhm.
Um, and also they are probably at the very worst, and this would actually be kind of an interesting state of affairs, we might be seeing the end of third party console exclusives, or at least permanent third party console exclusives,
Mhm.
if it is decided in various areas that this is a unreasonable restriction of fair trade,
Yeah.
which at this point would hurt Sony more than Microsoft, because Microsoft has been preferring to buy studios and make them first party.
Yeah.
Put that Windows and cloud money to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I believe that is the end of our shoe.
That's the end of our shoe. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. We appreciate it as always. Just to reiterate, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the bell for notifications, and if you're watching us on the replay, leave a comment down below.
Yep.
Because that
If you enjoyed our mild, spicy hot takes,
Yes, yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah, and we will see you all next week. Good night, everybody.
yep, good night.